Hello, day camp professionals, and welcome back to the Day Camp Pod. Woo-hoo! I'm Andy Pritikin, the director of Liberty Lake in the Philadelphia suburbs of New Jersey.
I'm Sam Thompson. I'm from Chicago, outside of Chicago, Illinois, with municipal day camps.
And we're camp professionals joining forces to provide a forum for day camp professionals to share ideas and best practices across North America and beyond. For today's episode, we'll be discussing summer parent communication with the help of my friend Matt Kaufman, a director from the legendary Camp Ramaquois in Rockland County, New York. We'll be sharing our thoughts on that in just a moment, but first, this Go Camp Pro podcast is sponsored in part by the American Camp Association, New York and New Jersey, dedicated to preserving, promoting, and enhancing the quality of the summer camp experience. For camp professionals, that includes a wide array of professional development, including the Tri-State Camp Conference, of which Matt is program chair, and other small conferences that can be found around town, around the tri-state area at ACA New York, New Jersey, ACANYNJ.org. The Day Camp podcast is also brought to you by the friendly and resourceful folks at CRS, Commercial Recreation Specialists, the fine purveyors of the best waterfront, and splash pad products in the world. Check out their website for a mind-blowing list of products at crs4rec.com. CRS is serious about fun. All right, 21st century day camp, summer communication, customer service, and we got with us Matt Kaufman. Matt, why don't you tell us about yourself and Camp Ramaquois real quick?
Sure. Thank you, Andy. My name is Matt Kaufman. I am the Associate Director at Camp Ramaquois. Camp Ramaquois is a large day camp located about 30 miles northwest of Manhattan. We serve children ages 3 to 15 from Manhattan, northern New Jersey, Rockland County in New York, as well as Westchester County in New York. We are very fortunate to have been in operation since 1922. Camp Ramaquois was a day camp, became a day camp in 1974. Up until then, it was a sleepaway camp. So very interesting type of camp because we are set up the way that a sleepaway camp would be set up, but our campers do go home every night. So it's an honor to be a part of that team. It's a wonderful camp. As far as what I do a lot with technology at Ramaquois, a lot with logistics. One of my passions happens to be staff training and professional development. So it's a real pleasure to be here today. And it's also an honor of mine to be part of the Tri-State Camp Conference Volunteer Committee. So hopefully I'll be able to share some of what we do at Ramaquois and help you guys out today.
I can't wait. And for those of you that have never heard of Ramaquois, you should look it up online. Like Matt said, it used to be a resident camp. So it's laid out just beautifully with a lake in the middle and all that, and all the buildings you would see at a resident camp. It also is a very large camp that services a lot of Manhattan people. So they got a nice budget and they're able to do a lot of things there and have people like Matt on staff, including a lot of other awesome people on staff. So Ramaquois is able to sort of do a lot of things that a lot of other day camps wish they could do. Ramaquois actually does, just because they have the manpower to do it and the facility. So in regards to the summer communication, which has been a hot topic, I have to say that anytime I speak to a day camp director, which I speak to all the time, this topic just always organically comes up from them, right? People are very concerned about this. I've been in touch with Campminder repeatedly in the last 3 weeks talking about this. What's going on? What do people need? All that kind of thing. I was talking to my friend Lori Schindler from Park Slope Day Camp in Brooklyn the other day. She said that her summer surveys from her parents, that half the people that were surveyed wrote on their own when, like, what can we do better? They said, text us, stop calling us. All right. So I became passionate about this topic when a few years ago, I found that my middle management people, right, my division leaders, my 30, 35-year-old kind of middle management people were getting more and more uncomfortable making phone calls home. And a lot of times I had thought they were making phone calls and they weren't. And when I talked about it with them, I saw the look in the eye that they really weren't comfortable about it. And that was frustrating to me, all right? And I sort of just, okay, I need to work on that more training, right? Then the next September, after that camp was over, season was over, I went to back to school night with my wife for my son. And I went around to all the teachers that he was going to in the high school, and they all said the same thing. They said, if you have a problem, email me, right? Whereas it used to be call and I'll call you back kind of thing. It was 100% email me. Matter of fact, they said, don't call because it'll just go to voicemail. I don't check my voicemail. Or it'll go to the office and they'll write a little note and it'll probably blow away, right? One guy even said, if you if you email me, I will get back to you within 45 seconds. He literally said that to me, to which I was like, dude, aren't you supposed to be standing up there teaching US history? Like, I don't get it. But anyway, so I took that information. Then the next summer, we had a situation because Liberty Lake, we were trained to make good calls. You call the parents to tell them how great everything's going, right? We had a parent call our office administrator in the middle of summer, completely upset. He said, if I get another phone call from this camp that's not an emergency, I am pulling my kid out of your camp. I don't care how much he loves it. And there was expletives in there. And now this guy was a doctor, okay? And he was, a busy guy. I sort of get it, but that made me, think even more about this. So that winter, when I came into camping, it was in the 90s, and I was trained by this, legendary Ben Applebaum character, whose whole thing was about customer service and phone calls and touches, and really, really staying in touch with the parents and making it a partnership, the whole relationship. So, but here I was now, almost 20 years later, and I said, I'm going to contact the 8 former Ben Applebaum camps that I started with way back when. They're all in the New York, New Jersey area. And I'm going to talk to the current directors there and see what they're doing compared to what we were taught to do, which is to call all the parents before summer starts, call them near the beginning of the summer, call them near the end of the summer, right? Call, customer service, right? So I called these 8 camps and I got the widest array of responses. Starting on one end, the traditional end, where one of the camps, a smaller one, but still a really awesome camp, said, all our middle management people are only allowed to call. They are not allowed to email. They are not allowed to text. And that's just the way it is. And we are old school, take it or leave it. This is us, right? And then all the way to the other end of the spectrum, where the director there is a young guy in his mid-30s with 3 kids that lives in Manhattan. And he said to me, he started laughing, actually. He literally started laughing on the phone. And I was like, why are you laughing? And he says, Andy, we don't want your phone calls. We don't want them, right? Stop bothering us with your stupid phone calls. I sit around with all these camp directors, you baby boomers and Generation X people, and you guys are so into the phone calls. I'm telling you, we don't want them. Unless my kid is bleeding out, don't call me, right? So I was like, wow. So that made me want to go investigate this more and see what other camps are doing and what kind of lines in the sand they're putting in there for their staff and what kind of expectations they're building for their parents, okay? So to start this conversation, I wanted to talk about what is our goal with summer communication? Like, what are we actually trying to accomplish here, right? So for me, the first thing that I wrote down was we want parents to feel in the loop about what's going on at camp, right? For the sake of diffusing their potential anxieties, right? Because we're sort of weaning them off our kids. We have little kids here. It's the first time away, right? And we also want to keep them aware of how awesome we are and all the things that are going on and make it seem like it's worth their dollars to send them to our camp, frankly. That's my thoughts. I'm going to toss it off to Sam. What do you think?
All right. Well, I guess, there's several different kinds of communication. I found my parents read the text messages more than they read or respond to anything else. So I've got a program called Rain Outline, which isn't just for rainouts. So if I'm on a bus on a trip, I've got it on my phone. And if we're stuck in traffic, I can put on Rain Outline to all my parents, hey, we're going to be 15 minutes late or whatever. And they'll always look at it. If I want to, the newsletter still goes to them via email. And I can see how many pick up and how many don't. So I don't know, it's maybe about 70 to 80% actually read the newsletter on email. So we still unfortunately have a few parents that we try to hand it to, which it gets soaking wet in their bag and flutters around the park. And, I don't know how effective that is. But my staff, actually, the counselors talk to the parents every day. Now that's a whole nother session on appropriate communication between a counselor.
Explain what you're talking about. So as the parents drive in, they park their car and come and talk to you, like a daycare
Yes,
center?
they actually have to walk across a road, with a light to bring their children to the beach. Once they get there, they have to check them in. So that conversation is usually really quick because they're running somewhere else. But at the end of the day, they stay in their car and we deliver the child to their car and have them sign them out. And that's when the counselors are supposed to say something good. At least one thing good that they saw happen during that day with their child. That's not a time for bad communication.
Right. So hold on a second. So what happens when that parent has an issue and starts talking to the 17-year-old about this issue?
We ask them to pull over and then we'll come talk to them. The director's right there. Usually my directors will catch on if there seems to be something going amiss, and we'll go over to that car right away and ask them to pull over and talk to them. If we know there's going to be an issue, then that's when we call or email and just say, when can we meet with you? When you need to see the nuances of the face and the tone, then you can't do it email. If it's a sensitive issue that you need to see if they're really upset or whether it's just like okay, whatever type of situation, then you've got to be in person.
Right. We're going to go back to that because that's a
Yeah.
very, very important point of like where we draw the line for these people, because we do have to give guidelines to our staff like that.
Absolutely. And I tell you, my phone system puts the phone messages in my email, so I never check my phone anymore, my work phone, because it's all right there on my email.
Same here.
So I am a lot faster if you email me than I am with calling back, with checking the phone messages.
Yeah. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think you both hit on a lot of really important topics. At our camp, I would say we have parents that are all over the board. We have parents that want a phone call every single day, and they just want to hear that their child is
the younger ones.
Generally speaking, those are the younger ones, the parents of the younger ones. But it can go up to even 8 years old, 9 years old. At times, parents just need that reassurance of a voice saying that everything is okay. And sometimes they have concerns that we might feel are minor, but they feel are major, and they want those addressed every single day. There, like you both are saying, there's a large number of parents that find a phone call a nuisance, even if it's a positive phone call. We think it's important to build relationships with parents, and I think the best way to do that is still through a phone call. I think it takes a certain talent to build a relationship through email, and it's even harder to do it through a text message. So we are still big on phone calls. It can be a nuisance for parents. We hear that all the time, and as our division leaders, our unit heads, our middle managers, as they turn into this generation that's less and less comfortable with phone calls, we do get pushback from them. They just want to send an email or send a text message, and we do allow that. But ultimately, one of our goals, Andy, you asked about goals for communication. One of our goals is for parents to feel like they're part of our camp, like they're part of the family as well. And even if it's sometimes it appears to be a nuisance for them, I think in the long run, a personal phone call to build that relationship at some point before or during the summer is really important. I think that those phone calls can be reduced slightly and supplemented by electronic communications such as emails and text messages. But to build that relationship, I think there really is something to be said for either face-to-face communication or voice communication. But it definitely is a tricky line that we're trying to toe here. And I think what we try to remember is that there's no one size fits all. There are certain parents that need one thing and other parents that need another thing. So that's I think the direction that we're going in is instead of having a policy of X number of phone calls per week or per month, the policy is meet every parent where they need to be and use your best judgment and just trust our middle managers a little bit more with those things.
Yeah, I have to say I'm a little uneasy trusting my middle managers with it because of the generational judgment of all that.
Yes.
So you mentioned a couple of great things. The goal of partnering with parents, right? I totally agree. We're day camp people. I think that most of our parents would love to be working at our camp and be teaching their kid how to hold a bat and how to swim and all that kind of thing, but they just are too busy to do it. So to make them feel a part of the process is super important, especially with the younger kids, all right? But going to the generational thing, I think that today's business systems are set up for email, right? Most businesses now have a constant contact or whatever. They're sending you a monthly or a weekly, update thing. Parents are expecting to get emails. Like Sam said, just like myself, I get my voicemails through my emails, right? I never listen to voicemails on my phone at work. I listen to them through my emails. But at that same time, my inbox is a disaster. Now, I'm talking to this guy, Matt Kaufman, right now, who gave a presentation last year about the zero inbox or whatever you call it, right? And you're just obsessive compulsive type A. God bless you. All right. I can't do it. All right. I had it down to like 250 last week, and I looked yesterday and it was up to almost 1,000 again, right? Because I'm a director of a camp and I'm involved in 92 things and I'm just getting them left and right. So I feel that most people's inboxes are so overwhelmed with emails already. Now, CampMinder does a great thing in that when you send out emails, you can see the open rate and you can see if a specific person even opens your emails. And we know statistically that when kids are in camp, parents generally open their emails because their kids in camp, right? When they're not in camp, that's a whole other deal. They ain't looking at their emails, right? But they are sort of trained, this generation, to look at their emails, although it seems like it's transitioning to text messages, right? So I feel like, Matt, what he said, his philosophy about the phone calls, I feel like he's sort of hanging on to a dinosaur a little bit, all right? But for great reasons and all. And, I'll be very curious because I know that, Matt's camp was run by a couple who had been there for like 50 years and are now retired, right? So I'll be interested to check back with Matt in 5 years to see if they're still towing the phone call line. But I do appreciate everything, and especially with a large camp, right? Matt and I both have camps that have over 1,000 kids, and to be committed to doing that phone call thing, I think it's great. And I tell my staff that even though nobody's answering the damn phone, because they are not, okay, that at least to leave a voicemail and find out when is a good time to talk to them, or explain to them that they can email us back or they can call us back, or whatever, so that I could at least hear a voice.
And Andy, I think that's key because I think sometimes it's a test to see how much we value that parent, that they want a message back, but as soon as they get a message back on voicemail, you never hear from them again, because it was just to see if you would really call them back. It was information they just wanted to feel like you heard them. And so sometimes it doesn't have to actually be a conversation. It just has to be a response.
Mm-hmm. Well, you want responses, right? What we're looking for is two-way communication. We don't want to find out things from our parents in September. That's the worst. Then we can't do anything about it. So we want them, so even if you're texting them, there needs to be a way for them to get back to you. Because I know Matt and I were talking about texting a year ago. And, if they're sending out, 800 texts, right? You really don't want 600 returns text messages. That would be a little cumbersome, right? But you do have to have a way to get that two-way communication going, because parents don't just want to be spoken to. They want to feel like they're, it's going both ways.
And now my site directors have a company cell phone. So now parents, if they have a message, hey, I'm coming to get them for the dentist or whatever, they can text the director instead of calling or emailing. And they've really liked that too, that they can text us in some way and not have to, especially if it's a short message like that, a scheduled change or whatnot.
I get worried. I know Matt's worried too about people texting the camp because it's just,
Yeah.
it could go all over the place.
Yeah,
Matt, did you go to the day camp conference to Deer Kill where the
I
directors
did.
there
Yes.
we're talking about, the directors at Deer Kill were talking about how they forward their phone lines to their personal home until 9 o'clock at night. You know, talk about a personal touch. I just have to give them a shout out. That is very impressive.
Yeah, we have found, well, we're often still at camp at 9 o'clock at night. But we have found that the highest rate of reply is text messages. So the lowest rate is a phone call, and then email, and then text messages have a very, very high rate of reply. So that's of course another issue. If you start sending all these text messages, you got to have some kind of office system in place to handle all of the replies, which becomes a huge challenge.
So what do you do?
Well, we do forward them to an email address, and we have people monitoring that email address, but we try to limit the number of text messages we send out, because we do get a flood of replies, even if it's just thank you. and you know, someone's got to read that.
Right. Well, but I think it's key, like we're talking about our voicemails going to our email, the fact that you can convert a text message to an email. That's key. So you're only looking in one rabbit hole.
Right. Exactly.
One device instead of multiple.
Right. So Matt, you touched on something. You said you don't want to send a lot of text messages, and I appreciate that. And I tell my parents I'm only going to text them when it's like, you know, a super important thing, like, you know, borderline emergency thing, right? So the bus is going to be late. I don't know. I mean, there's that kind of stuff, right? So is there a line in the sand, you think, at your camp, of like what would translate to, you know, important information that would be an email versus a text message?
That's really funny. There's a line in the sand, but it keeps moving. So I remember, maybe 5 to 8 years ago, we started using email, and the rule was we're only going to email if it's an emergency. And now we email about tomorrow is crazy sock day, whatever.
Of course.
So that line keeps moving. So with text messaging, as of this past summer, the rule's really been that the text messages are about busing and transportation, and like you said, buses being late or road closure or something of that nature. And that was the line in the sand for 2018. I could tell you already for 2019, that line is going to move. And it's definitely going to keep moving. So it's really tough, because you try to train the parents so that if they get a certain type of communication, that it's really important. And as they become used to that communication, the things that you send become less and less important over time. So that line's going to move, and there's probably going to be something after text messaging that comes along in a few years, and that will be reserved for the emergencies. But that line keeps moving, Andy. I don't know how else to answer it for you.
I appreciate that.
No, I have to admit, I did text my all my rain out people a week ago or so, and I haven't talked to them all winter. I just said it's 212 days till camp, and I'll send out one more text message when registration opens in February. But other than that, I stay off of it. I leave it for the emergencies. But I thought on the off season, they're not going to panic. It's, you know, an emergency, but they may get camp in their head then.
You know, it's off season is interesting, right? Because you don't want to be a pain in the butt, but you do want to stay on their mind, right? So it's a big balancing act, you know. And when you pop up in somebody's phone versus their cluttered inbox, it's a big deal, you know. So I definitely reserve those things to the more emergencies. So the next thing I have here is, who keeps in contact with your parents? Like, who are the people texting and emailing and calling your parents? I was talking to a day camp the other day who told, a big day camp, like a big Northeast day camp, a contemporary of ours, Matt, who said the only people that contact parents are the office staff, period. That's it. Because honestly, they're the only ones she trusts, I think, to do it because they're professional communicators, right? So meanwhile, I have a leadership team, so my camp is broken up into divisions of 2 grades, and every one of those divisions has 2 leadership division leaders who are the focal point of communication for me. Who does the communications in your camps?
For me, for newsletters and Rain Outline, I'm the one who does that. But my directors can answer questions via, if somebody's texted them or emailed them, the directors can respond. Counselors are
I got a
not
question,
allowed.
Sam. So
Yes.
your directors, okay, who are a level below you, okay?
Yes.
Do they have? You say text them. What are they texting? Their personal cell phones? Are they like how are they?
No, we provide them with a Park District phone, and that's how they have a laptop and a Park District phone. So their parents can communicate with them either by text message or email or a phone call, and it's not on their personal devices. So if they're receiving those, they can respond to those. And half of my directors have been here 30 years, so they've got a lot of experience with those tricky situations. Now, the counselors can only say the good stuff at the end of the day because that's really tricky, especially in this age where my daughter and her friend will be sitting beside each other on the couch, but they're text messaging each other beside each other. So they're not as good at the talking face to face. And we don't want them to say something then that will be misconstrued. So
yeah, I mean, at my camp, I certainly send out the big blanket ones, right? Like you were talking about, the more emergency ones. But things that are about the kids and about their division or division leaders. What about Ramaquois, Matt?
I think we're similar to you, Andy. If there's a large issue or something that applies to the whole camp, that'll come from the directors via an email. The division leaders are the ones that really know the kids. They're in charge of an age group, and they're hired because they have the ability to connect with parents, campers, and staff. So one of their core responsibilities is communicating with the parents. So they're making the phone calls, they're sending the emails. Of course, we have other people that communicate with parents, such as the nurses, the transportation team, our trip team, but those probably fall under the auspices of the office. So most of it is really done by the division leaders. One thing I do want to mention is the most scary thing for us is that our bus counselors have a lot of contact with parents. Our bus counselors are the first people the parents see every morning and the last person they see at the end of the day. They are the face of our camp in a lot of ways, and they do text the parents. We did allow them to text the parents this past year, which was good and bad. You're putting a lot of trust in the hands of young people, but the parents really seem to like it. If you live in Manhattan and you get a text message saying, "Hey, we're around the corner, come down to the front of your building," parents really appreciate that. They don't have to wait in front of their building for 10 minutes waiting for the bus. So our relatively young bus counselor staff is speaking a lot and texting a lot with parents, and I think that's something that we have to continue to work on in terms of training if we want to continue down that path.
Oh my God, absolutely.
So that is certainly the most nerve-wracking thing for us, and it all comes down to trust and who you trust, and we certainly trust our division leaders, but the counselor staff, the bus counselor staff is more of a leap of faith for us.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Matt. That is really spectacular. And we live in a crazy time. We have seen so much transformation of communication, right? You talked about how 8 years ago you guys started emailing, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, can you imagine 8 years ago thinking that your 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds be text messaging parents that are spending over 10 grand to come? I mean, oh my God, that's insane. So, but yeah, there's got to be training going on. And I just, I went to the Joe Kruger conference a couple of weeks ago about the multi-generational workplace kind of thing. And they were talking about a couple of really relevant things on this point. Two things. First of all, people's cell phones are not what they used to be. When we first got our cell phones, it was like this top secret thing, and you only gave the digits out to the, someone like super valuable and all that kind of thing. Now, 9 out of 10 emails you get from strangers have their cell phone numbers at the bottom, right? Cell phones is replaced the business phone, the home phone. Like, nobody cares. If some turkey wants to keep on calling me on my cell phone, I just block them and they're gone, right? That's people have a different view of cell phones. And I say that because there's a lot of baby boomers out there that are still running day camps that probably don't get that, right? That the cell phone is just a different animal than what they're accustomed to. And the other thing is the 16 and 17-year-olds texting and all that. Yeah, their frontal lobes are not fully formed. They're about 10 years away still. So I can appreciate the fear. But what this Lindsay Pollock, who was talking to us a couple of weeks ago, was saying is that this new generation, the Generation Z, that they are much more savvy with how they text and what they put on social media than the Generation X people were. She called the Generation X people the Red Solo Cup generation on social media, right? Whereas this new generation understands their brand, right? And Adam Baranker, I was talking to him from Jeff Lakes. He spends a lot of time with his staff during the summer, really, really pushing that, educating his younger staff about their brand and not saying and doing and texting and posting dumb stuff that, and the implications of it. And that these younger people are actually way more responsible in that realm than our fears tell us that they could be. And for my 19-year-old son, I have to say, comparing him to my 22, 23-year-old daughter is a big difference. Just seeing that.
Also, now our questions, tell me about your child, those kind of questions are now on our camp docs instead of being separate information gathering. And then at the end, our evaluations are on SurveyMonkey. So our intro and our exit are changing. And how do you do that best? I would love to hear more ideas on that.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting, Andy, something you said about the how savvy these younger people are. It is very scary to have them texting parents that are of children that are on their bus. But one thing that we thought of when we consciously made the decision was, I think we're actually more confident with them texting the parent than speaking with them on the phone.
Exactly.
Because that's how they communicate. They don't talk on the phone. If you're ever around a 16, a 17, or an 18-year-old, you will never hear their phone ring. They don't get phone calls. No. That doesn't happen. So,
Matt, I haven't gotten a phone call in my office the whole time we've been on the phone here, okay?
Yeah, it's true.
But
you probably got a text message, right?
No, I probably got 29 emails, I'll tell you that. Right. So another way that we're communicating to our families is through social media. You cannot discount that, right? I have parents that the easiest way to get in touch with them is through Facebook, right? And certainly the younger people, you can send a direct message through Instagram and get instant responses, and nothing else works. Text, emails, nothing, right? And by the way, those people are now, our camp parents, right? Most of our camp parents are millennials now. That's the fact, right? But just like Sam was saying, and we're all saying, like, for these big announcement kind of things, right? The directors are generally sending out the mass things, right? And for the more specific stuff, the next level people are sending out. But what about the stuff on social media, which in many ways is just as important as the big mass things, because that's your branding and all that kind of thing? Do you, during the summer, have someone dedicated to that kind of communication?
Because I'm part of a big organization, I don't have control over that, but we do have someone who does that. One nice thing she did last year, she teamed up with a non-for-profit, our McHenry County Living magazine, and they came out and filmed an afternoon at camp and did a little video, which is actually going to be on one of the tools for my activity this week. but I didn't have the resources to do that myself. I have to get permission from her, but it was beautiful. And now it's on TVs in all our buildings, and it's a really great piece. And we did part of that through in-kind donations because we don't have the budget. So they advertise in our brochure, we get them to do this for us, that kind of thing, back and forth.
Mm-hmm. So Matt, at Ramaquois, are they sending out, who's doing the Facebook posts and such?
So we we have a we have a person that does our social media posts every day. We post to Facebook and Instagram every day, and I approve all of those posts. So at some point in the middle of the day, I'll see the post, and then it'll go up. We find at this point engagement on Instagram is a lot higher than engagement on Facebook for our parents, which is a little bit unexpected, but I think it's going to move in that direction a little bit more in the coming years. We also have started to do a little bit with Snapchat, which is more geared towards our staff, actually. Our older campers and our staff, because we want to keep our staff engaged. It's important to keep those staff members coming back year after year, and they're really on Snapchat a lot. And I would imagine in the next year or two, the camp parents are really going to get into Snapchat. I don't think they're quite there yet, but we'll probably move in that direction either next year or the year after.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I'm thinking Snapchat's hit its apex. That's my personal thing. We'll see.
Could be.
Matt's talking about communicating with staff. Certainly, God bless mass texting. All right, because anybody that's trying to call or email their staff in 2018, 2019 is nuts, because it's just not going to happen.
Our beach captain, if you have scheduling that you need to do, I know for our situation, if they work for me during the year, they can only work 28 hours in the summer. So I have to sub out that 5th day, basically. So I have a lot of scheduling things, and I haven't gone to it yet, but our beach captain does, with the lifeguards, an app called When to Work. And so you can either still have control over all your schedules completely, but all of your staff can see it, change shifts with your permission, or you can let them do it. So they've been automatically loaded into the shifts that they said they could work, but if they have something going on, they can ask another staff member to switch shifts, and they can switch on the app, and you see all of it. So your point of power is up to you, how much you want to be involved or not involved, but at least it's all in one place. It's visible to all staff. And so I am considering looking into it more for my situation, but I know for the lifeguards and such, it worked out well.
Yeah, at Liberty Lake, we use our facilities sometimes 7 days a week in the summer, and therefore we have to do something like that with our maintenance and our lifeguards and our food service, and we use a similar app called Homebase, which is really super, and my wife oversees that. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about goes back to something that Sam said early on in the podcast, which is when to call, when to email, when to text, right? The lines in the sand that Matt had mentioned that is constantly moving, right? And the expectations to parents. Going back to my Ben Applebaum training and my years, before technology took over the world, I used to be happy to tell parents, when you get a phone call from Liberty Lake Day Camp, don't let your heart drop, okay? Like, it might be us telling you something really good about that. It's probably going to be something good, right? Because we were making all those good calls. I loved saying that, because as a parent, when my 2 kids were in elementary school, if I ever saw the phone light up and it said Plumstead Township Schools, I knew that my kid either got hurt or did something wrong. There was no other reason that school was calling me, right? And I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that organization, right? I wanted to be the friendly place. Like Matt said, we're forming partnerships with these parents, right? But when I was talking to Josh Mail, who is a younger camp director, he was saying, yeah, those days are gone. Like, they don't want your phone calls, and what he tells his parents, which I have taken, and, the mantra is, we are going to communicate with you about positive things at camp through emails and texts. And when we encounter challenges at camp, we're going to call you and we're going to work on it together. Now, he says it a lot more eloquently than that, but that's how he frames it. And, I switched over to that a year or two ago, and makes my parents happy. They are totally happy with that. You just have to be a lot quicker on that phone call. Be like, everything's okay. Your kid's not bleeding out, kind of a thing. So, Sam had mentioned like when it's something where you need to see their face, right? And body language and that kind of thing is important, right? Like Matt said, these people, your middle management people much prefer to email, right? So I think it's on us to be excessively clear about when is an email versus when is a phone call, right? Or a text message, right? Go ahead. The floor is open.
Yeah, I think I think that's a tough one, because what my heart wants to say is that we should trust our division leaders and middle managers to make that call, because it's so different. It's so different based on the child, based on the parents, and based on the age. For our 3, 4, and 5-year-olds, we can't call enough. I mean, we call a mom of a 4-year-old to tell that mom that the child just had a great time playing soccer, and she's thankful. She loves that phone call, at least for our parents.
If she's a stay-at-home mom, maybe not necessarily if she's working somewhere.
Yeah, probably. But I would say across the board, if that mom picks up the phone, she's happy. She likes that. When that same child is 7 or 8, it's a little bit different. They're not too interested in that phone call anymore, but some still are. So one thing that I think is really important is to have a voice communication before the summer starts or the first few days of the summer, because if the first time you're hearing someone's voice, you're talking about something negative, I think there's a lack of trust there. That relationship hasn't been formed yet.
Great point.
So for me, we're going through a lot of this at Ramaquois. We're discussing all this in detail this off season as to where we're going to go. But I think something that we're not willing to give up yet is a pre-camp voice phone call for first year campers.
Yeah.
I think that just is extremely important. We also have all of our first year campers come to camp and meet that division leader before their first day. I think that builds a lot of trust. That way, when you do get a phone call and it's something that's not exceedingly positive, you have a basis for a relationship as opposed to that first contact being a little bit negative.
Yeah, you just paraphrased what I tell my division leaders. So, good
and
job.
Matt, I wanted to touch on one thing when you were talking about ages of the kids and how much they want you to send something home to mom. It is surprising to me that how much teen campers want me to video what they're doing and send it to mom on my phone, because it's a company phone, so I can do that. But for, on the zip line or whatever, I'll be filming some and they'll be like, did you get me? Here's my mom's phone number, send it to her right now. And so those moments are important and very fun that we're able to still give them that chance without them being homesick that day or whatever, to show off what they were just doing and that they're having fun at camp.
That's a great point. And we struggle with this at Liberty Lake, and I know lots of camps struggle with this, because like one of our big things is that we're technology free, right? Tech free camp. And I know lots of camps, tout that. And yet I talk to some of my friends who work at like high-end sleepaway camps in the middle of nowhere, and they're walking around taking selfies all day and texting them to parents because the parents love it. And I don't know, maybe it's because of my age. I'm like, ooh, like that hurts. Like, how could you do that? Like, to me, we're trying to wean the parents just like we're trying to wean the kids, for that independence thing.
Yeah, we just had the exact same conversation at Ramaquois. If we allow our division leaders to have either iPads or utilize their cell phones, there's some really, really cool things we can do. We could send videos home, pictures home. We could do all sorts of fun things that the parents would really love. But what's the downside to that? You know, we tell our older campers they can't bring their cell phones to camp. You know, so ultimately we decided that the drawbacks outweigh the benefits for right now.
Don't do it. Don't do it. It's a tipping point, Matt. That is a tipping point.
But ask again in 3 years.
Oh my God, no. Look, I think that camp is always going to be a step back in time. For a traditional camp experience is always going to be a step back in time to a much more simpler time. And part of what we're doing is trying to teach people to communicate on a human level. So to me, this conversation is blasphemy. We're moving on to the next topic. So training our middle management staff to talk to parents, right? Are we being intentional about this in our staff training for our leadership team? Because they did not grow up in this world, right? Something that Lindsay Pollock was saying at the Joe Kruger conference the other day. She said, you have to realize that a lot of these younger people now that you're hiring, okay, have never picked up a phone that wasn't for them, okay? Because they don't have house phones. So the only time they answer a phone is when someone is calling them. So they're not being raised the way we were, where we had to pick up a house phone and say, hi, oh, hi, is your mother there? Oh, who is this? Who is calling? Like just basic formalities they don't have. Everything is so informal, right? That we can't make any assumptions about how people talk on the phone anymore. So are you doing anything with your people about that?
Yeah, so with our bus counselors who do communicate with the parents, they're very young, and everything that you mentioned certainly applies to them. We actually give them scripts. So we will give them a couple of sentences to text to parents before the summer, and just a script for some of the common things they're going to have to say to parents during the summer. And hopefully they use that. And we go over, we don't want them abbreviating anything. We want them to spell out you, not the letter U. Your is a big deal. We spend a lot of time on that in training. There, and there, also a topic of our training. It's very important. It's a pet peeve of mine. So yeah, we cover all that with our bus counselors, certainly. With our division leaders, our middle managers, we do train them on the way that we want them to talk to parents. But I would say the bigger thing there is that we're probably only hiring people that have those skills to begin with. If they don't have those skills yet, they're probably not going to be put in that particular.
That's going to change. As we've said, that is going to change.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it is. I mean, the younger you get with those people, the less.
But for right now, we're hiring those people who have that experience as teachers,
right.
Talking to parents on phones. But you're right. That is probably going to change over the next few years.
And my experience with that, having this level of people, and I have ones that are in their 20s and I have ones that are in their 50s, right? The ones in their 50s embrace the phone call and are calling about things that my camp parents may think are trivial, but they don't, because they were brought up in that generation. And the younger ones are not making the phone calls that I would want them to make, because they don't think it's that much of a big deal. It's this thing we're going to just be battling.
Sure. Yeah.
With my situation, I have to do a lot of training because we're in the public eye. We're in public parks. So all day long at camp, we have strangers around us completely, in the water beside us. Their kids may be talking to our kids and so on. So that's a whole nother ball game, safety-wise. So I do a lot of training with that you are never not in a fishbowl. You've always got to be acting as a positive Park District person and not slipping into anything else. But I think I'm going to really concentrate more on the language and the communication this year, because we did have one or two problems with the way counselors approached a parent when there was a minor problem. And so I think I need to address it in the beginning.
Man, I do not envy that situation, Sam. That is a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
But that is your landscape. All right, I got a few things I want to touch on really quick and just see what you guys do at your camps, just to get a barometer on it. The first thing is summer photos, okay? So when people first started doing summer photos, the world just got inundated with camp photos, right? You know, if you use Camp Minder, you could upload 1,000 a day if you want, right? Some people are making huge Facebook photo albums every single day and all that kind of thing. And that's how we sort of started. When I was working with Jay Jacobs at North Shore, we had a photographer, 2 photographers walk around with lists to make sure that they got every single kid and make sure we got them on their birthday. And it was like unbelievably detailed and drove everybody nuts. I went to another ACA New York, New Jersey conference a few years ago about anxiety, right? And the woman there from Cambridge, I forgot her name, expert in this field, was saying that this kind of thing that camps are doing actually creates more anxiety for parents than it actually helps. That if you create the expectation that they're going to see their kid's picture and then they don't see it, and they're going through 100 pictures trying to find the kid and they don't see their kid, that you're actually making them nuttier. So we have changed our philosophy recently. And what I tell parents is that every single day, we are going to upload a dozen or so pictures on Facebook that are going to give you a sense of what's going on at camp that day. So I'm giving them the expectation that their kid is not going to be in a picture, all right? And then we do have a photographer who takes beautiful pictures, and we will eventually upload all the pictures into Camp Minder, you know, password protected, and they can go through there if they want to see those things. But I sort of did a 180 on it, and it irritated a few parents, but I'm thinking about the mental well-being of the obsessive compulsive parent, the first-time parent of the 5-year-old who is just like, oh my God, if I don't see my kid smiling, that means they're miserable. So what are you guys doing with pictures?
For us, only people with Park District phones are allowed to take pictures. No private counselors are, you know, I don't know that how you can police that completely, but they're not supposed to be posting or putting them out there. So we're supposed to filter through the directors and myself. We don't post them daily. They're going to our marketing department to be used for a brochure or for the videos that are going to be at the buildings, or the Facebook page for marketing purposes. So at least the expectation isn't that you're always going to be in there. So it's a surprise and, oh yay, my kid was on the cover of the brochure this year. But then you still get the phone calls, why wasn't my kid the one on the cover? Because my kid's so cute. And they're serious. They're not, you know, not tongue-in-cheek at all about it. So yeah, it's not, we haven't gone the extra mile to get them out in a timely
Fine. You don't
fashion.
have to, Sam. You don't have to. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I'm a little ashamed to tell you guys what we do.
No, you don't have to. You probably do what a lot of camps do, so don't worry.
We have a media team of 9 people. We upload 1,000 photos a day to our parent portal. We put out a 5-minute video for our junior campers every single day. And then we put out 2 other videos weekly. And this year we integrated facial recognition into our photos, which worked fairly well. Facial recognition is not perfect. It's probably never going to be perfect. But the parents that used it seemed to understand that there were some limitations to the facial recognition. So we really do our best to organize the photos so that parents don't have to sift through all 1,000 photos to find their child. So we tag them with the name of the division so that the parents can quickly go to that division, or they could use the facial recognition feature to try to find photos of their child. Certainly we get calls all the time. My child is not in enough pictures, and we'll try to accommodate that. You know, we want every child to be in pictures. So our photographers do have lists of each group in camp and try to be equitable with their time. But it's definitely a huge burden. It's a burden on our staff, but what what we have found, and I hadn't heard that about anxiety, increasing anxiety. That's interesting. I'd like to learn more about that. But what we've found is that the photos are a way for our parents to open conversations with the children, and that's something that's really important to us. We love the idea of children going home and talking about camp with their parents. So if a parent sees a photograph of the child on the zip line, for instance, they can talk about that, and we love that. We love that concept. But it definitely is a huge
undertaking.
It is. I mean, the amount of money that we spend on payroll and the amount of time that they spend.
Right.
But I think
you're committed to doing it, and you do it right. So I mean, this is a great 3 snapshots here, right? You got Sam coming from the municipal, version. You come me, that's in the middle, and then you on the extreme. And like I said when I was introducing Matt, Ramaquois has got a lot of manpower, and they could commit to things like that. And the thing is, one of the reasons I pulled back is that in order to do it right, you actually have to do what you're doing to a degree, right? You got to fully commit. And by the way, like my son goes to Villanova now, they got a media team that works full time there that does this kind of thing at a college, because this is what people want to a degree. So I get it, right? And I think it's admirable on that level. So, and by the way, Matt was mentioning videos. We have an amazing video guy at my camp too. And I cannot undersell the importance of having a good video person on your staff, because still photos are great, but when you see things like in full motion and stuff, like that's what people are used to seeing now. Even on Instagram for a minute, like that's what people want.
Yeah, actually one of the nice things about staffing, you don't hear too many good news in the staffing realm these days, but it is getting easier and easier to get good video people. There's a lot of college kids out there who have a talent for that.
Mm-hmm. No doubt. All right. So another thing, newsletters. So Sam was talking about the hard copy newsletter getting wet in the bag. And, I always say blowing across the parking lot during dismissal, right? So we stopped a long time ago, like about 4 or 5 years ago with that. And now we're all e-newsletters that are sent out by division currently, although we may switch that. What are you doing in regards to newsletters, Matt, or just keeping people in the loop on a general sense on a weekly basis?
Yeah, so we do both. We still do a hard copy of the newsletter. We do one per week for the whole camp. We do, it's kind of a formula that we do. We'll do a staff spotlight every week, and we do send that home as a hard copy. And we also post it on our parent website. We don't email that home. That's one of those things that I think we feel is a little bit of an inundation if we start sending that as an email every week. So we try to get the parents to go to the parent website as much as possible, so that newsletter is up there for them. But it's not very, the parents are expecting different kinds of communication. I don't know too many parents who are going to sit and read an entire newsletter at this point.
Yeah, good point. That's a very, very good point as far as intake goes.
We try to keep it in bullet form instead of paragraph form. Mm-hmm. Because of that, they'll quit reading after the first paragraph unless you've got, bullets on the things that they really need to know.
Yeah, I mean, we were spending all this time and energy on this beautiful 4-color graphic thing. It looked awesome in 1995, right? Like today's, you just got to think Instagram. Like when you're thinking how people consume, just think Instagram, because that's the way it is right now. All right, last thing before we go to our program tip of the week, parent notes, okay? So back in the day, it was all notes. It was literally notes, right? And we had special envelopes, right? Bus mail we used to have and all this now. Now it's like those are a recipe to never make it out of the kids' camp backpack to the division leader, right? What are you telling your parents if they have important information to get to you, right? I'm coming to pick up my kid at 1 o'clock today, all right? Or something like that. How are you telling them to contact your camp?
Text message your director.
Okay.
On the director's phone.
Look, that's the easiest answer that you could get out there.
Yeah.
Quick, and then they've got a written copy.
Mm-hmm. So we get, Andy, like I'm sure you do, we get hundreds of notes a day.
Yep.
In 2017, we started We used to get just paper notes. We would send home like a message from home envelope, and they'd put their note in that envelope, and we would deal with it as a paper note. In 2017, we went to either emailing or texting in addition to the paper notes. And we were able to build a system where if you email a certain email address or text a certain phone number, that note will automatically be attached to the camper's profile, and it'll get printed out, and we can then hand that to the division leader or whoever it has to go to. So in 2017, I would say that it was about 50-50 with electronic notes versus paper notes. This past year, it was probably 80-20 in terms of electronic versus paper. And I think next year, we're not really going to offer the option of paper notes. I mean, obviously, if a paper note comes in, we'll deal with it. But yeah. I think next year it's going to be all either text messaging or email.
So not that I want to get into a hard techie conversation, but how the heck do you attach a text message to the camper's profile, Matt?
That was something that I built.
All right, that's what I figured. We'll leave it there. Matt is a smart dude, Cornell engineer. All right. So all right, so we're going now to the program idea of the week. Okay. So every week we want to give you something that you could take back to your camp and use that's a day camp sort of specific thing. That is cool, right? So mine start with I was on the day camp conference, the ACA New York, New Jersey day camp conference. We visit like 2 or 3 day camps a year, and we visited Crestwood out in Dix Hills, Long Island, and came across this big cage. I said, "What's this for?" They said, "Oh, it's our puppy program." I said, "What?" They said, "Everybody loves puppies." I agree with that. They said, "Oh yeah, we bring in 4 like the most amazingly cute puppies, maybe more, every single year. The kids work with them all summer, learn how to train them, groom them, feed them, wash them, all that kind of thing. And then at the end of the summer, we auction them off for charity." And I was like, home run, right? How could you not love a puppy program, right? Now, to give credit due, one of the owners of Crestwood is Mark Transport, who took this program from Camp Taconic, which is a resident camp program in the Berkshires in Massachusetts. So just to give all credit. So at my camp, Brandy, one of my directors, she took this, she's a dog person. They did a whole investigative research project and said Newfoundlands are the most lovable puppies for kids. They swim in the lake and the pool. They love them. They're cuddly. They're fluffy. They're like teddy bears. So we went out and drove, 300 miles and got 2 Newfoundland puppies, and they are so amazingly gorgeous and lovable that my wife fell in love with one and Brandy fell in love with the other. And now we got these 2 gigantic 100-pound dogs in our office. You heard them barking earlier. And now our puppy program has turned into the dog program, which turned into feathers and fur, because last year we augmented it with ducks and chickens and goats and things like that, like a petting zoo kind of thing. We have a camp parent that comes in once a week. She's a groomer, and she works with the kids on really teaching them how to deal with the dogs in a grooming sense. We have another parent that lives at a local farm. She brings her goats once a week. They do goat yoga. The kids are doing downward dog with little pygmy goats on their backs. It's the funniest thing you've ever seen. So we're committed now to the animal realm, but just to go back to the simple sense, the puppy program, great idea.
Very cool. At the Women in Camping conference our summit was amazing. They had a therapy dog. Mm-hmm. So even us adults need that puppy love every now and then. So, well, mine this week is Minute to Win It. On the toolbox, you'll see a little video of the different stations that we do for Minute to Win It, but so the goal is as they go from station to station, they have 60 seconds to complete a task. So it could be, like a bags game. It could be getting bolts onto a stick. How many can you get on the stick in a minute? There's a million different stations that you can do for quick little things, doing the cups. There's a bunch of them on the video, but it's so exciting because each station has that goal and they're excited at each station. And then we always have our slip and slide at the end to give them a cool off. So Minute to Win It is always a good activity.
It is always a good activity. We do it too. And something I could tell you that we do, because unlike Matt, that has enough indoor space for like a small city, I have like no indoor space, like similar to you, Sam. I have a lot of tents and pavilions, and we actually save our minute to win it stuff to bust out during rainy days.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. And it's a nice thing that they can then look forward to the liquid sunshine a little bit.
Yeah, we do minute to win it on rainy days also. I love the puppy program. We actually we did something similar. We brought in therapy dogs for our kids this summer, and just if anyone's interested in that, the therapy dogs might be a good option, because in the therapy dog training program, they're actually required to spend a certain amount of time with children and with people in general. So you might be able to find a therapy dog training program and have them come in free of charge. So that could be a good option for some people. That's
a great idea, because let me tell you, my dogs are so great, because if you could deal with hundreds of kids coming up to them all day and hugging them,
yeah,
like you said, like that is amazing training.
Yeah, and so my program tip of the day, something we did this year, we were able to find a couple of local graffiti artists who were really edgy, but also responsible. And they were able to come in and teach the basics of graffiti art with the lingo and some of the techniques to our older boys and girls. And it's always a challenge to get older boys into crafts. And this was fairly successful with the older boys. The older girls loved it. The older boys were into it as well. So if you have someone in your area that does this kind of thing legally, it's a really cool program that we were able to bring in this year.
That's great. Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, most camps have a wall, you know, even if it's a what's it called, a wall ball wall, or even if you have to put up a bunch of planks, you know, a bunch of pieces of wood up there. We've done that kind of thing too. It's awesome. Well, thank you, Matt, for being a part of this. We're definitely going to have you back. You're a plethora of awesome information. And thanks, Sam, as always, for your cool ideas. And we want to thank executive producer Travis Allison from Go Camp Pro to help getting the show out to you. All right. If it wasn't for him, this would just be an idea that we never took action on. So check out our show notes from this and other episodes at daycamppodcast.com. And if you don't want to miss an episode of the Day Camp Pod, you should subscribe to it on iTunes, Stitcher, whatever else you get your favorite podcasts. iTunes reviews are important. We'd love it if you click the ratings and reviews and show us some love. And that's about it. So we will see you next time with another hot topic from Day Camp Land. Until then, take it easy. Have a good one. Enjoy the fall.